Greetings. This week's topic is the African and American roots of hip hop. The strongest aspect of hip hop performance that connects to the African roots of African American musical traditions is the storytelling found in the overt lyricism of rap performance. Centuries before the creation of hip hop, West African griots rhythmically told stories, primarily using sparse percussion. The griot is responsible for orally recounting the history of royal individuals, acting as their advisor and covering various musical roles, including musician and praise dancer. Griots play a variety of stringed and percussion instruments, including the kora, which is pictured. It typically has 21 strings played by plucking. Oftentimes, a repeated loop is played with a brief transitionary flourish, acting as a musical background or backdrop for telling stories, speaking, singing, and humming over an extensive period of time. Similarly, hip hop artists speak their history into music. They speak their existence into sound through rap and the selection of a musical background, evoking specific emotional responses. Hip hop treasures the lyricism of poetry found in rap and literature. So a successful rapper is not just clever, but possesses a good flow, which is a combination of rhyme and rhythm in time to create a fluid or soothing effect in communicating different emotions. The delivery or cadence of the flow aids in the reception of the lyrical content for audience members. Before hip hop, some blues and jazz performances occasionally featured spoken word poetry, but no musical genre made the spoken voice a central element. In the Western classical music tradition, Sprechstimme is a vocal technique between singing and speaking, and it typically occurs in German operas or musical dramas, especially those composed by Richard Wagner. This is the closest classical connection to rapping. So what makes a successful rap verse, or how would you describe a successful rapper, like a good rapper? An artist that people enjoy has a voice with a distinct timbre and uses the pitch of their voice in clever ways. An artist possesses skill in selecting and using words to convey thoughts that can be understood by others. This makes their songs or passages of their songs memorable. An artist is consistent with repeated demonstrations of their skill in rapping complex rhyme schemes on or against, the meter, or the regular occurring pattern and accents like bars and beats. Some argue that it is impossible to typify or define what makes a good rapper or MC, that it is unteachable, possessed as an innate skill developed by practicing and listening to other performers, like it is a learning process. Regardless of how people define it, you know a good performance when you hear it. Let's consider some examples. Some of hip hop's earliest MCs like Grandmaster Flash and Africa Bambaataa had distinct timbres or vocal sounds. Timbre, looks like timber, and spoke their words with passion. They were clever with the use of onomatopoeic sounds and rhythmic phrasing, making their raps catchy and memorable. Tupac was also known for the bass in his voice and the passion and aggression in his delivery. DMX's rough vocal style and harsh growls became his signature sound. The raspy nature of his voice made the force found in his lyrics authentic. Trina's voice is especially high, almost squeaky at times, but was sonically odd when used to talk about overtly sexual content. The analysis of songs and lyrical content will be central to understanding the potency of hip hop songs. Having a strong musical background is not necessary, but being an active listener is. Let's take a detour and briefly go over the elements of music so these aspects can be discussed correctly in your later analyses. Timbre, that word again, a word I've used before, refers to the unique sound quality of a voice or instrument sound. Texture refers to the layers of sound present in a piece to create a dense or sparse soundscape. So I can say, no, this song has a heavy texture. There are many things happening simultaneously, creating a very rich sound in my ear. Rhythm is a combination of sound that is short and long. They are often repeated as a pattern in a piece of music. That's probably a word you're going to use a lot because hip hop, is using interesting rhythms. Another word you'll use a lot is probably melody. The melody is a series of pitches that are often repeated following that set rhythm. This is often the part of the song that is on the hook. The listeners want to sing along to it. The form and the arrangement of parts in a song, the form is the arrangement of parts in the song or piece of music. In hip hop songs and a lot of popular songs in general, there is a hook or chorus that is repeated and verse used to tell stories or elaborate on the hook, and potentially a bridge that goes between the two and happens once within the song. There is no set formula for form, although the alternating of verse and choruses is often very common. Dynamics refers to how loud or soft the music is and how these changes over the course of a song create dramatic effects. Harmony is the sonic quality of additional voices occurring simultaneously with the melody to form chords. So these sounds layered, combinations of these notes that happen at the same time. This does not often happen in hip hop vocals that are rapped, since they do not sustain pitches, but it does happen in the music. Harmony does sometimes occur on the track, is what I was saying, at certain points though. So that might be a hard word for some. Tonality refers to the sound of the music in its totality, whether it is pleasing, which is consonant, that sounds consonant. These notes sound nice together, pleasant to my ear, or unpleasant, which we call dissonant. And dissonance can sometimes be used briefly for dramatic effect. This element does not have to be used often, as it is not common in hip hop musical discourse, but you can still use it if you feel comfortable and you feel like it's the right context. African-American musical traditions began as an amalgamation of remnants of African cultural practices combined with Protestant musical practices taught to enslaved Africans in America through the indoctrination of Christianity. This is what initially gave birth to spirituals. Hip hop represents a relearning of the African roots, an appreciation of the origins of African-American people, more so than many other popular genres that came before it. Race is an unavoidable aspect of hip hop studies, considering the fact that it originated as a genre for minoritized voices. And minorities are often distinguished by their race or by their difference. They are othered. Higgins points out the disjointed nature of the appreciation of Black music with the rejection of Black bodies. The celebration of Black genres, but by white performers, and how hip hop challenges this, greatly connecting Black and white patrons to the genre. Although he mentions Eminem's position as the biggest selling rapper of all time, something that the rapper himself connects to his race. Higgins suggests that the African-American creators of jazz and rock and roll have, quote, given up ownership, but that may be an incorrect assumption, suggesting that there was a fight for connection to the genre. Their creation of these genres is historicized adequately and followed by the creation of other genres. As stated in the first lesson, African-American musical expression spans a continuum of Black thought and experience. Blues paved the way, let's go back real quick. Blues paved the way for jazz. Jazz paved the way for vocal genres, starting with rhythm and blues, which was initially sold as race records. The image on the screen is really important. It shows a progression of African-American musical expression in America. It's created by ethnomusicologist Portia Maltby. It's a great image for later reference. So I wanted to make sure I spoke on that. Sorry, I skipped ahead. Hip hop differs from the other genres before it in that its creation came out of political struggle and social protests. Aspects that do not seem to be the focus of the majority of newer hip hop songs, which have often been attacked for their use of profanity and violent imagery. While these topics will be discussed in week 5, it is worth mentioning that the use of profanity, like the N-word, serves a cultural function. Higgins states that the word originated as a racist term whites in America used to describe Black people as objects. This is true. The word has since been repurposed, used by other Blacks as a term of endearment or connection. Black people use it without it possessing the venom of its original, of its origin, and white people are not allowed to use it, although it may be spoken privately. They are not using it publicly. Many argue that the original meaning is still present, which is what makes it so negative when Black people use it to define one another. Higgins also seems to dislike the term, although tainting the text with his bias may be premature. Rappers have removed the venom, yes, from the term, making the taboo cool. It's still heavy and problematized with the racial history it possesses, but taken from the fear it inflicted on Blacks and power it gave to whites to the power it gives to Blacks and the fear it inflicts on whites. Maybe not fear, but uneasiness. This does not justify the term, but aids in considering its liberation in used language. So let's briefly discuss the Gilroy reading, which I'm sure might have been a little challenging for some. It's a family affair. Diaspora people, a term he uses to describe those once and potentially continuously, physically, historically, and culturally tethered to Africa as a place of origin and understanding identity, is a powerful title. It is one that Gilmore connects to issues of national identity and how we observe sameness or don't observe it in groups of individuals in different spaces. He does not focus on an African diaspora as much as a Black diaspora, stating that, quote, only 37% of the Blacks who live in the Western Hemisphere live in the United States, while 40% live in Brazil. This is why he created the term America-centric, right? To describe how we often frame racial issues, especially those originating from hip hop. I focus on this data because I wonder how you or I or others in the United States think about race or Blackness or belonging. The struggle for African Americans with belonging in the national identity of the United States is not singular then, but is also experienced in diaspora. Do we see Blackness and Black lived experience as a singularity, monolithic, or as a myriad of things we attempt to encapsulate in skin color? It doesn't do the job. The new racialized humanism, Gilroy speaks of, benefits from the idea of what he calls homogenous national community, but this does not exist. There is no post-racism utopia. Gilroy challenges the idea of a racist family by describing the hierarchy of power associated with the idea and who benefits most from this idealized vision of societal existence. He mentions the term hood, something we discussed previously, as untranslatable in London because the culture existing within the space does not have a similar historical reference point. He mentions that people are often described as being from the hood, but that it is not a physical place like a nation or a race, but possesses those things in a troubling way that lacks uniformity and maybe value. This may be a difficult reading, but it is worth taking the time to read and reread and considering how we view race, culture, and identity in conjunction. Look at the way Gilroy analyzes lyrics, offering his interpretation without limiting the hyper-creativity of its producers. He considers how his own positionality can shape his understanding, stating on page 90, quote, I am a compulsive consumer, user actually, of that culture, but I can't keep up with the volume of hip hop product anymore. I don't know if anyone can. This is his recognition of knowledge and potential lack of understanding simultaneously. He allows space in his writing for the analysis, which is brief and used to further his messages about the distance between the family structure, created ideas of lived spaces, and identity formation connected to musical consumption, and then reminds the reader that their interpretation is not the meaning of the song or the lyrical content in its totality. He recognizes the sound as an object that takes on different meanings and has varied power over time. Be sure to post your CLR by Wednesday at midnight and respond to your peers, a peer, by Saturday. Aside from viewing the lecture, you only have 2 weekly assignments and should observe deadlines. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions or concerns. I hope you're listening to all the assigned songs for the CLR and watching the videos that accompany them and those mentioned in other lectures to further set yourself in a hip hop mindset. Have a great week.